Frank J. Avella with Awards Daily. Australia's international Oscar submission is the riveting film Shayda, written and directed by Noora Niasari. Welcome, Noora.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. It's your first feature, and it's such a gripping one. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Can you speak a little bit about how specific this story is to you and your mom's own experience, and why you decided to write it?
Yes. So I was 5 years old when I lived in a women's shelter with my mother, and it was an experience that really stayed with me. It was the first time in my life that I felt a sense of safety in the world. So it was very formative in that way, and the warmth and friendships that we gained in that time, was fundamental to the rest of our lives. So as you can imagine, when I became a filmmaker, it was just one of those stories I knew I had to tell, and I knew I was the person to tell it because you know the world of a women's shelter is not something we see on screens very often, or if at all. And I wanted to do it from the inside out, from a survivor's point of view, from an authentic place. So it was around 6 years ago that I asked my mother to help me, embark on this journey, because I obviously needed her as a collaborator, but also just her permission, because it was our story. And she put a lot of trust in me to find the cinematic potential of the story beyond our story. So it was really, I think, for her, a letting go, and for
Mm.
me, a rediscovery.
And in terms of getting the film made, was it easy to get financing, and were you always going to direct?
Um, I would say yes. I was always going to direct. It was, it's an author kind of personal piece in that way. But in terms of the financing, we're really lucky in Australia to have government funding like Screen Australia and Vic Screen, and they have supported me throughout my career. So it was a logical step for them to come on board with Shayda, and I think it was the strength of the script and also the team. We have Kate Blanchett and Dirty Films as executive producers, and I've been working with Vincent Sheehan, who's a very established Australian producer. We produced the film together. So, but we did finance the film without any cost attached, which was kind of rare,
Oh, yeah.
especially for a foreign language Australian film. But yeah, I mean, I think it speaks to the trust in the story, and also a reflection that this is not a typical Australian film. It's a unique case, for a non-English language speaking film set in Australia, about a culture by someone who's lived that culture. So I think that they recognize the uniqueness of it, and how outward facing it was, even though it's set in Australia and it is a personal story, it's very universal. So it speaks to audiences around the world, and it has, and it's been a beautiful experience sharing it.
I saw it back at Sundance, which we'll talk about in a minute. One of the things I love so much about the character Shayda is that she's not a victim. She's not just a victim. She's multifaceted. She knows how to have fun and enjoy, and she's trying to enjoy her life. And she's also trying to keep her child safe and herself.
Hmm. Yeah, that's right. I mean, the I never wanted the film to be steeped in victimhood. I wanted it to be hopeful, and encompassing all of the nuances and facets of escaping domestic violence, which in parts are really traumatic and dark. But there's also, that looking toward the light, and so much of that is about a re-embracing of her culture, a celebration of Persian New Year, of passing down, you know, poetry and music and dance to her daughter. And so the balance of light and dark was always really fundamental to me and to this film.
And yeah, and that's another thing I really loved about it was how it did celebrate Iranian culture, but it condemns the men. Particularly, the men who think that women are property.
I mean, you know, it in this, you know, obviously there's specificity in a sense because it's an Iranian mother and daughter, but it's not so much about Iranian men being the problem, but about patriarchal ways of thinking. You know,
Yeah.
in all cultures, there's men who seek to control women, who see them as, you know, see them as having ownership over them and wanting to, you know, dictate how they choose to live, how they live their life, actually, not giving them agency. And so this film is so much about a woman finding agency in the world and living life on her own terms.
Yes, very much. And you need only look at the headlines just, recently disgusting. It's a timely theme because all these well-known figures being accused of some kind of sexual misconduct left and right and just abusing their power. It's unbelievable. And yet,
It's so common. It's happens all around us all the time. And you know, the issue of domestic violence especially is a huge epidemic in Australia. There was 60 women so far killed in Australia this year, which is more than last year and the year before. And
mm,
I'm sure there's similar statistics in the United States.
yeah,
And
it's high.
I think for me, it's like there's so much silence and shame around it, about talking about it. And that's one of the reasons I was so passionate to tell this story, as difficult as it was for me to, you know, uh, come back to my childhood trauma and to make a film. You know, it was, for me, the beacon is always to shine a light on these issues and have that conversation, you know, open up in various places in the world. And because the thing is that domestic violence thrives in silence, and the more we speak about it, the more there's opportunity for change.
And you were able to do that via the other women too. Some of who were warm and friendly, and some who appear racist. Just like in life. I had an immigrant mother, so I know firsthand about what it's like to be made fun of. Uh,
Yeah.
and was that also based on what you and your mom went through? The
Yeah, I mean, I would say that the film is emotionally autobiographical. And so you know, there are fictional elements, but everything is really steeped in a place of truth. And so yeah, we did experience moments of I guess misunderstanding or a lack of connection with some of the other women, but for the most part there was a warmth and a commonality, you know, with these you know, they're strangers, but at the same time there's a familiarity because you're going through the same experience. So overall the feeling was of a sisterhood, of a collective yeah, a collective warmth and a sense of safety. So, you know, there's always going to be misunderstandings, cultural things, but you know, above all, you see in the film, you see their journey in the film of how they come back together, even if they have little moments of tension. But it's, you know, that feeling of alienation for Shayda is very real. Um, you know, in her community, in her family, in the shelter at times, but the overall feeling is a sense of finding belonging and a place of identity in the world.
and she's embodied masterfully by Czar. Let's talk
Yeah.
a bit about Czar and casting her, finding her. She's absolutely remarkable. It's a remarkable performance.
She is a star, and there's no other word.
Yep.
It was one of the most incredible experiences of my life working with Zara. And And you know, we cast Zar before Holy Spider, before she won Khan.
Wow.
Uh, so we actually Golshifta Farahani, who's a French Iranian actress, introduced me to Zar and recommended her for this role. And you know, it was after a year-long search of finding Shayda in Australia, which we didn't. So she was the first person I saw internationally. And soon, you know, within the first few seconds of seeing her audition tape, I knew she was Shayda. There's this incredible quality she has in expressing an emotional world of a character just through her eyes and her expressiveness, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and she's lived through so much in her own life, of, you know, so much trauma, and she brought a lot of her own experiences to the role, and she was able to connect with my mother in the lead up to the shoot. And you know, they shared so many stories, and we became a bit of a family, you know, making this film. And um she, you know, she was also just very open-hearted to playing a mother. She hadn't played a mother before. And I think that speaks to how beautiful that mother-daughter bond is in the film, because both Zar, who plays Shayda, and Selena, who plays Mona, they were just in love. Like from the first encounter, they just fell in love, and you could see that every single day on set. And it was, you know, up to me just to try and capture it.
And it leaps off the screen. I mean, I wanted to ask you about your relationship with your home country, with Iran. Um, have you been back? Would you be able to go back now?
Um, yes, I have been back. I wasn't able to go back until I was 18, because of the custody laws that you know, restrict kids from being able to leave without the permission of the father.
Wow.
So so that's the reason why we didn't go back for so long. So after 16 years we did go back, and I was able to you know, go to my place of birth and walk through the streets and hear people speaking Farsi. And it was a very surreal, um, you know, out of body experience, reconnecting with my homeland. And at the same time, you know, I always had this idea that I'd be going home, but at the same time, when I went back, it was like I was treated a little bit like a tourist, like, oh, your accent is so cute, and
Uh,
oh, you're from Australia, and like, so it's this thing of like, you know, not quite belonging in either place. But um that was a very interesting realization. I guess I was quite naive at 18, 19. but yeah, I think it would be very challenging to go back now. And that was a decision that my mother and I made together when we were, you know, discussing whether or not we would make the film. And for, you know, for a good year or so in development, she was wanting me to change the culture of the characters so that
oh,
you know, we could go back. And at a certain point she was like, well, you know, I didn't make all of these sacrifices for you to censor yourself and for you to not have a voice. And that was such a generous act, you know, for her to, you know, just let go and give me that permission to stay true to our story in telling it the way that we've told it. And she's really proud of the film. And you know, we really stand by the women of Iran and what they're fighting for. And you know, in my eyes, Shayda is just one of, you know, many women fighting for agency and freedom in the world.
there are many of the international features reflecting that. It's actually very gratifying to see people taking those risks. Um, so let's talk about the reception of the film because you played Sundance, and then won the audience award there, and it's just kind of been pretty amazing ever since. You were at TIFF as well.
Yes, yes, it's been a remarkable journey, 12-month journey with the film. And There's been a few highlights. One was obviously Sundance was a dream come true, and it was before the strike, so it was a great opportunity for all of our cast and crew. I think there was around 25 of us there to celebrate the achievement of the film, and sharing it with audiences, and getting that reception from the audience was very heartwarming. And I remember I was there with my mother, and at the end of the festival, after she'd participated in Q&As and things, she hugged me and said it was the best experience of her life, and thanked me for making the film. So it was very, very beautiful. And after that, I would say the next highlight was our European premiere at Locarno Film Festival, where we played in the Piazza Grande, and there was 8,000. It was a sold out, 8,000 person screening in the outdoor cinema, and for the closing night. So it was a really incredible evening, because I don't think I've ever felt so seen in my life, having that many people emotionally reacting to the film at the same time under the
Mm.
stars. It was very beautiful. But overall, I've been really everywhere in the world, whether it's Korea or Canada or even Indonesia. We were there 2 weeks ago. Really struck by how the film has emotionally connected with people. I've had countless people come up to me after screenings. I spend hours with audience members sometimes,
Mm.
because they just feel so compelled to speak up about their experiences. And it just feels like a really cathartic moment for so many people. And it made me realize how universal the story is, and how it's beyond my mother and I. It started from us, from this seed, but it's become an opportunity for people to really have this healing moment, because they feel really seen by the film. And it doesn't matter where they come from, what gender they are. I've had like middle-aged men like weeping after screenings. It's been a really beautiful, rewarding experience sharing the film.
And now you guys are selected for Australia's submission, and Australia's only had one nomination in the history. Uh, what does all that feel like, and what would it be like to make the shortlist?
Yes, we are the dark horse in the race, I would say. Yeah, it's not Germany or France. But I think it's a really important moment for Australian cinema, having Shayda be the submission, because even the film that was nominated, Tanner, some years ago, was shot in Vanuatu. Typically the films that are submitted from Australia are shot overseas, in a different language. And but Shayda is an Australian story. It's set in Australia, and it's Farsi language, majority Farsi language. So it's very unique in the landscape, and I feel so honored to be representing Australia in this race, because of that. It really speaks to the strength of diaspora filmmaking, and the possibilities for different kinds of voices and storytellers to come through in this country, and say something new, say something authentic. So for me, even the submission is a huge achievement. And I'm really honored to really be in the race, because there's so many incredible films. And obviously if we got a nomination, it'd be an amazing excuse for my mother and I to dress up and be on the red carpet. I already promised her I would take her if she was. But I'm sort of just receiving all of the uh moment to moment kind of celebrations as they come. And for me, like, if we made the short list and anything beyond that, it's just a positive step in more people seeing Shayda and more change happening in the world. So that's the most important thing for me.
And it's good to enjoy the moment, to appreciate the moment. I think too many people think towards what I'm doing next, which is my next question. Going to make, and my last question actually, I'm going to make the assumption that you're already working on a new project. How did you decide what to do next? And if you can tell us a little bit about it, that would be great.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, for me, it's been a really interesting journey in terms of reflecting on the kinds of films I want to make next. And I'm really fortunate that I already had my second film lined up in a way, because I was writing it at the kind of at the same time as Shayda. It's called Raya, and it's the second in my trilogy about Iranian women, and it's an adaptation of an Iranian American novel that was brought to me by Gary Foster, who's an American producer who produced Sleepless in Seattle and more recently Finest Kind. And yeah, it's a really exciting project because it's set in France, and it's a kind of Thelma and Louise, but with two Iranian women in exile, and one happens to be a former queen of Iran. So
Oh,
yeah, I'm really excited about it. We've cast the leads, who are incredible. I can't say yet
oh,
uh, who they are, but uh, yeah, well, they're it's currently in the stage of financing, and Sister is also one of the producers who produced Chernobyl, and it's just going to be a really different flavor to Shayda, and I'm excited to really dive into that world next
well,
year.
can't wait to see that film. And as soon as I click off record, I'm going to ask you who those two leads are. Uh, Thank you, Noora, for taking the time out to speak with us. Shade is an absolutely incredible achievement, and I wish you the best of luck.
It's my pleasure to speak with you, and thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Bye bye.